Hi, welcome to today's live. Today we're going to be talking about truly listening to your scene partner. So you might have been experiencing that sometimes it's hard to listen because you're hearing the voice in your head a little stronger than your scene partner, and so you might be hearing, the voice in your head thinking about, oh, what should I do, or should I do the scene this way? In the middle of it, you're trying to sense maybe the director or the casting director, or if you're doing a tape, you might be sensing the expectation of the casting director or the show. And so you might be hearing that voice in the background in such a loud way that you're really unable to connect and really listen to what your scene partner is saying, especially because you know what they're saying because you've learned your lines. So you're like, oh, I don't really need to listen. I need to deal with this voice. And this voice can go in so many ways, right? It's really, what should I do? What do I have to do? Or maybe did what I just do, or what am I doing? Is it not enough? So there's a lot of have tos, a lot of shoulds, a lot of maybes. So it's very loud. Like some people call it you're in a critic. I don't even know if I want to put a label on it, but it's just like there is something inside of you in the background that's making a lot of noise, and basically it's not the character. It's really your ego that's busy trying to figure out whether you're being liked or not, whether you're being safe or not, whether you're going to be validated or not, whether you're going to be loved or not. And that voice is in a kind of a hypervigilant state. It's so busy trying to do its job really well to keep you safe and loved and liked that it's taking over everything. And I know how frustrating that can be, because when you're listening, you're really present and it feels really nice, and you're really able to truly connect, not just with the words that your scene partner is speaking, but you're in the moment, you're with the energy, and you're being the character, and so you're really living a true moment, and you're fulfilled, and you know that that's when you produce your best work. So it can be really frustrating, and especially if there's pressure, right? Especially if you're on a big set, or especially if you have a bigger audition or a bigger project to tape for, you may feel that there's so much at stake that, if you book the audition, you could really, have a change in your career. It could change your life. And therefore that pressure can make that voice really loud. And so there's a higher tendency for you to not actually be able to really truly listen, to not just hear the words, but to actually be living the moment with the person in front of you, dealing with the conflict that those two people are dealing with, and really being in that world and not in your ego's world. So listening to the art that you're making rather than what your ego is making. And so you might have caught yourself, knowing that happens, and therefore you might try to over prepare a lot so that you make sure that you'll feel, not stressed or relaxed, and you won't have the voice coming in. You may have caught yourself controlling, so trying to really know how the scene is going to go, and you're feeling that if you know how the scene is going to go, then you'll be relaxed, and then you'll be able to listen. And you might have caught yourself also doing many takes, which is also, just a downward spiraling loop. So none of those strategies, whether it's overworking, working hard, trying to control the outcome of the scene, or doing many takes, is going to get you to the place of utter presence where you're really with the other person and you're living the moment, and therefore hearing and listening to them as an entire being. So what I would like to do today, of course, is look at the root of the situation, because you may have also caught yourself, thinking that the root is that there's something wrong with you, and then you have to do more acting classes, or try to find a better coach or a better teacher, or a more expensive class, or a more international class, or you might have tried to fix yourself a lot. You might have tried to blame the circumstances a lot. You might have try to say, is this too much pressure, or because the reader or the other actor is not good, so I can't listen to them. So those are not the ways, of course, to move through the topic of listening to your acting partners. And so the way that I would like to do it is to move away from all of these obvious reactions that you may have about listening and trying to fix yourself, overwork, over-prepare, control, blame. Move all those to the side and actually look at why is this happening. And I guess the way I would like to frame it is to say that you can't listen because your hearing capacity, your listening, is clogged. I'm going to say that your ears are clogged. That's how I'm going to call it, to be a little bit provocative and to attract your attention. Your ears are clogged. And what do I mean by that is that I mean that since you have been little and since you've been trained, the way that you've been raised, educated, programmed, indoctrinated, wired, whatever you want to call it, you've been raised to listen for something. So the distinction here is going to be, you haven't been honored to just listen. You've been trained to listen for something. And what you've been trained to listen for is that you've been trained to listen for looking in the person you're connecting with, what's right? What am I supposed to say? What's good? What do they like? What will make them accept me? What will please them? What will keep me safe? What will keep me validated at school? What will keep me loved? And so, in a way, you're bypassing your own listening and what you've been trained to listen for, and I'm going to show you how that was done in your childhood, is to listen for, in the other nervous system, what do they want? So that I can adjust my presence to what they want so I'm safe. So your hearing, the plumbing of your hearing has been diverged to another goal than the one of actually listening to what's there, of actually being present, opening and receiving the energy, the information, the sound bites, like everything that's coming to you. You've been trained to bypass that and get to the outcome of, I need to make sure this person likes me. I need to make sure this person keeps me safe. I need to make sure this person thinks I'm right. I need to make sure I'm not in danger, basically. Right? And so you see this in your childhood with your parents who have lovingly, but not knowingly, asked you to repress all your emotions, right? Which is why we have a pacifier. We give babies newborns, 1-year-old, 1 hour-old babies who are crying, we give them a pacifier, which means to force a certain outcome on someone. So we ask children to not feel their feelings, which is what nature wants you to do, which is why you do have feelings. It's your guidance system. But in the model, in the conditioning, in the education system that we're in, there's a firm belief that feeling is no good. And so since day one, since hour one, you've been pacified. We've put a plastic in your mouth that you didn't have an option to not have in your mouth in order for you to shut up. When you were angry, you were told and probably scolded for being angry. When you were scared, you were probably being told, again, well-intentionally, to not be scared, that it was silly to be scared, that there are no monsters, so stop being scared. There's no reason to be scared. So all of your emotions, your own listening to yourself, your own listening to the energy that moves through you, because emotions are energy in motion, has been interrupted. And instead, you have been trained and you've learned, because if not, there were consequences that were painful, that you had to listen to what they want. Because if I cry and my parents or school tell me to not cry and I still cry, there'll be some punishment, there'll be some humiliation, there'll be some consequences. There'll be a withdrawal of love. There'll be a withdrawal of safety. There'll be a withdrawal of comfort. I will sense in the energy, if I'm crying or angry or scared, my parents or my teachers are telling me not to do that. If I keep going, I will feel that their energy will change. And if my mother's energy changes or my teacher's energy changes and I'm a very little person, it's very scary because my safety depends on you. My safety depends on the adult. So if they change their behavior, frown, change their tone of voice, raise their voice and say, no, that's not okay, that's bad, it's very scary for a little person. Because as a little person, I know my life depends on you agreeing with me. So what do? You're trained to not listen to any of that and repress all of that, and instead listen hypervigilate constantly to figure out what do they need? How can I make them happy? How can I please them so I stay safe? And so you do that. And so that's when I say your ears are clogged. It's because, you've been clogged to real, pure, true listening, which is just, I'm letting things in without knowing where it's going to take me, without trying to control how it's going to affect me. I'm letting things in and I don't know what's going to happen. That's true listening. You've been trained to listen for a certain reaction on the other side so you stay safe. And so that's what you do. That's what that voice inside is doing all the time. It's trying to assess, am I doing it right? Should I do more this? Should I do less that? What if I'm too much this? Or maybe that. Maybe they would have liked this. So you've been doing that since childhood. You were forced to, and thank God you did it because it made you survive. You're alive, you're here. It's a coping mechanism from childhood. But if you're taking it now in your art, the problem is you're not truly present. You're not truly listening. What happens when you undo that conditioning, which is the work that we do in our community, it's called resetting. It means that we undo all these learned behaviors, all of that voice that is trying to live in accordance to others, and come back to, I live with my guidance system, with my emotions, with my truth. Just because it goes through my body, that's what I honor. If you start doing that work of undoing everything that's fake, everything that's coping, everything that's from childhood, and you're left with your true self, when you listen, you don't know what's going to happen. When you listen, you're really an open instrument and you're really present to the other character, and you let their energy, their behavior, their movement, their tone, their words, you let them hit you without trying to be in the next moment to figure out how you're going to react. Because you're trusting and present to the fact that your instrument, with its own energy, with its own truth, with its fear, its sadness, its anger, its arousal, its joy, when it's raw, when it's pure, when it doesn't have an agenda, is brilliant. Because it's the only thing that's real. If really you are having a certain reaction, it's the only thing that's really there. If your partner is really saying a certain thing in a certain way, if it's truth, it doesn't matter if it fits the idea that you had or that they had. If it's truth, it has a life potential, a life force that is so magnetically bigger and more powerful than anything you could possibly come up with, anything you could fabricate, control, or desire yourself. That's when it becomes art. When you just let the other person be what they're being, and you let that energy come and hit you, and you let yourself not know how it's going to affect you, because you've done the work of undoing all of those fake mechanisms, all of those masks, all of the coping, so that you can trust that your instrument is alive enough to take that information in and to let itself react authentically. So that's what happens when you're really, really, truly listening, is art can happen. Art meaning life can happen in this case, because that's your job, is your capacity to be really truly alive when you're going to do a scene. That's your responsibility. So that's what's at stake. So the opportunity here is to realize, oh wow, if I'm realizing I'm not able to fully listen in that way, in such a way that it's really open and unplanned and uncontrolled and raw and really free and authentic. Well, then I'm just stuck somewhere in a cage, in masks, in coping mechanisms. And there's no amount of over preparing, trying to fix yourself, trying to do another class, trying to learn from another teacher. That doesn't restore the clogging of your ears. What restores that is to actually move through the junk that was poured in there, the demands of you pleasing everyone, the shoulds, the authority, all of the pressure that was shoved down your ears and your throat in childhood, so that you can have clear tubes. And that's the work we do. We undo all the mud that's been sprayed on your whole instrument and on your senses, and we wake up your original instrument, the one you had when you were born, the one you were when you were a child. And that's why we call it resetting. We undo the mud, so that the light, the truth, the DNA that only you have, the uniqueness that only you have as an artist, can once again shine. And from there, listening is the only thing you can do, because you're actually present. There's no way you can listen if you're not present. And if your thoughts are going to trying to figure out how the others will do this or that, well, then there's no way that you can listen to them, because your energy is partly busy with something else. So if this makes sense to you, and if you want to go back to that truth of listening, of really being there with the other person, of allowing what they're sending really impact you without knowing where it's going to take you, if you want to be back in that joy and that thrill and that art of acting, which is not acting, then you can type free 100 in the comments, and we'll send you some free trainings so you can get started. And if you're like, oh my God, this rings my bells and this resonates, and I've been wanting to do this my whole life, which is often the case, then let us know, and we can let you know how you can get started. All right, well, thank you so much. I hope you're having a beautiful week, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.